What's up guys, my name's Avery. I'm currently under contract on my 5th property and my first 4-unit property. And today I'm gonna go over my inspection, which I have here on my computer. And probably by the time that I actually put this video out, I'll have closed. But just want to go through my inspection because this is one major thing that people sometimes have trouble with when they go look at a property. They don't really understand what they need to fix, what are issues, and so hopefully you can learn something when you look at this video and go look at your next property to see what issues arise and how much those things might actually cost. And before we get into it, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button because it helps me out for the YouTube algorithm, gets more people to learn about this stuff, and also makes me feel a lot better as a person and not just putting all this time, effort, and money into content creation without anybody watching it. All right, so hopefully I've figured out how to edit myself into the corner, and I've also tried really hard not to put the address on here. This is actually a really cool inspection report. This is my 5th property that I've had under contract and that I'm buying, and it's by far my favorite inspection report that I've ever had. It's just interactive, easy, and not so annoying. You don't have to scroll through a bunch of pages. So if you're in the Raleigh-Durham area, 360 Inspection Services, not like I get a kickback or anything from talking about it, actually a really great inspector, so it's pretty awesome. Really in the report, it's gonna go through different parts of the report. You can see on the left side here, site work grading, exterior, roofing, gutters, etc. And then the overview part is going to talk about any issues that came up, and then the information part is just general information of what we see. So I'm just going to go one by one through to the end. I think there's like 10 categories, maybe 11. And we're going to look at what the inspector saw and then also just general information of the property. So inspection details, overview, there is nothing, just shows that it's inspected. This is just a very broad category. Has the information, again, kind of appreciated because you have temperature, if it were raining, but it wasn't, clear and humid. If you can get it so that your inspection is on a day that it rains, I think that's really good, especially in an area where I am, where there's notorious for having water issues in a lot of people's crawl space and basement. It did rain the night before, so we were able to see some of that stuff. So that was kind of helpful, but yeah, it's better if it is raining, not that you can really control that kind of thing. Again, it was a nice sunny day. These are just some exterior photos of the property. So first he got into the site work as well as the grading. The very first picture, there's a walkway issue. You can see that it's kind of crumbled over time, but it almost built in a natural step. So I really wouldn't see this as an issue, probably nothing that I'm gonna do with it. And another kind of big thing that's in the property that is a little bit odd is that in the backyard, there's this crazy sort of, not sinkhole, but kind of big hole, as well as culvert from the city. So the city has these drains that go from city streets to other city streets, but they go through private property. And this has crumbled over time, had some issues. When I walked into the property, I was kind of trying to figure out what it was. There was some back and forth between the seller and the city trying to figure out what the cost would be. For some reason, they took over 2 years to try to figure out the cost. I called the guy the day that I went to the open house, figured out exactly what the cost would be for the homeowner that would be the new owner. And so it really wasn't that bad. I think a lot of people were turned off by it because it looked like a huge thing, but it was not that major of a cost, and the city covers up to 75% of it. So it was like $23,000 for the city. So quick math, it was like $6,800 for someone to cover that, which could sound like a lot of money, but for what it is, I don't think that's that terrible. And the rest of the inspection wasn't that bad, so it didn't come out to be too bad. And it also scared off a lot of people. So it was helpful for me when I was trying to get this property under contract that a lot of people were turned off by this specific thing. So those were the two main issues from the overview, and then we just have general information here. Other than the concrete step, you can just see there's a picture of some of the stones in the back area, a little walkway. Other than that, there wasn't really anything from this particular part. So that's all we got, was to talk about this step as well as the back area, which I had already figured out with the city. So that's all good on my opinion, and that's the cost that we have so far. So the next piece would be exterior and structural components. This first part here is about these stairs, and it said that there was excessive rise. So you can see this bottom step right here. It's a little bit taller than steps normally are. Not something that I care about or would fix, so I'm just going to ignore it, probably. Really doesn't seem like a big issue, but often inspectors have to point these kind of things out because there's codes and stuff like that, but again, not really a big issue. And then exterior paint, possible lead-based paint. This house was built in 1910. which might sound old to some people out there, but the first two properties I bought are pre-1900, so not that bad to me. But lead paint's not really a huge deal if you don't touch it or start disturbing things. So it's just something that they're gonna have to point out, but again, really not a massive deal. And there were some issues in the basement and crawl space, which I'm going to be addressing on the very first day. So they basically, on one side of the property, and you can see here, there's this little crack, it's pretty minimal. And this was put in the 90s, but they completely redid the foundation on one side of the property because there has been some water issues, so the house moves, shifts, etc. And so there's this little crack here. Nothing too major. You can kind of see it longer against this foundation, but this type of foundation that we're seeing on the right is newer. Maybe you can kind of see further on, there's this brick foundation, which is more standard of older homes. But you can see this has been newer and someone completely redid this. And also in the crawl space, there has been some water and moisture issues, which again, I knew about. Very first day, we're gonna get someone to build a French drain on the interior perimeter of the crawl space, plus put down a vapor barrier, which just keeps all of the moisture in the ground rather than going up and getting to the wood, as well as put in a sump pump. So if any water arises at the lowest point of the crawl space, it'll get sucked up and thrown outside, which will help all these issues. I already got a quote for that and have the guy scheduled. Total of $3,500, which actually was like half the cost that I thought it would be, and it was a recommendation from another investor in the area. So I feel confident knowing they will do good work, and they also showed me photos of their work. So some other things that were found, there was a termite inspection as well that I did. There's one little termite tube area, mud tunnel. This is what it looks like if you ever go into a property and look for termites. Not a huge deal, could be a lot worse. It was just in one really small part of the property, but have a termite crew. So the termite inspection people are also a company. They're gonna come by also like first, second, third day that own the property and come fix this stuff. And that was just under $500. And you can see also here, there's some previous termite issues, and just being in an area where there's water and wood, there can be termites. It's just super humid here, so there's a lot of bugs and stuff. So other than issues they found, let's head over to the information part. They also looked at, and one of the things that I was really happy about in the property, but just in general, they've added a lot of masonry piers or supports. In these old houses, sometimes they're a little bit wavy or things start settling over time, especially when there's water. So you can see over time, there's just a ton of supports in the basement. So that's good. Not really something I'll have to fix. So happy about that kind of stuff. And they've really done a good job kind of maintaining those sort of things. So that's always good, and happy about that. And then you can see they're just going over some of the beams in here. There's no insulation in the front half of the house on the bottom, but that doesn't really impact me as a homeowner. The tenants might be a little colder in the winter, a little hotter in the summer. So I don't know, it kind of depends on their situation. And then also you can see we have the attic access here. It's got some crazy old tin roof. I've actually never seen one of these before. So tin roof, basically, I think it's like 50, 70 years old. And then every single 10 years, you're supposed to paint it, which seals it. So there's no like, not flashing, but there's no underlayment or anything. So you can see in this photo right here, like that's actually the roof to outside. And then these are the rafters. It's not like there's plywood sheets and then underlayment, which I think is like ice guard, and then the actual shingles themselves. But this isn't the entire roof. There's a few different sections of roof. This is just one part. So that is that. The other thing that he noted with the floor is you can see here that there's some elevated moisture. So you can see this 22 over here. He said 22% is like just at the top where they say it shouldn't be any higher. And that really, again, that vapor barrier that I said we're gonna put in will help a lot of these issues. Just there's moisture just coming from the earth, from the ground, that just goes up and then connects to the wood. And in order to get rid of that, put the vapor barrier down, again, French drain, sump pump, fix all of those issues. So that's why I want to do that on day one. All right, next we have roofing and gutters. This is another thing that I want to fix on day one. You can see in this photo here, there's a ton of debris. And here's a picture of that roof, a little bit more close up, kind of a funky little roof, but there's just a ton of debris in the gutters. Definitely want to fix that, because if your gutters are full and water can't actually go through the gutter and downspout system, it's just going to drip over to the side of the house, penetrate the foundation, and that's also probably causing some of these water issues here. So if you just clean out the gutters, that'll take care of like 90% of a lot of the water issues that you would have, just so that water goes away from the house rather than towards it. So that was the only negative thing that they pointed out about the roof. We can see some more photos of the roof here. So here's that tin, but you can see there's shingles here, and then a more modern metal roof, and then actually down in the little bit of back area, there's also more shingled roof. So there's a few different types of roof on this whole place, but just some general photos of the roofing. So there's, again, just a lot of different types of roof, but nothing too crazy, and there were no leaks, so that was good. There was a previous leak, which we'll see in the rest of the inspection, but it's been taken care of, so not a big deal right now. Next was the insulation. So he did recommend, this is like old rock wool insulation in the attic, which again, if I were living here and I wanted my home to be more energy efficient, then I would probably think about doing more insulation. And also, before you do any of this energy efficient stuff, definitely talk to the utility provider. When I was in Massachusetts, I did a lot of this stuff, and they cover a lot of the cost, because then it allows them to not provide so much energy, and it costs them less money to provide less energy. So they have a lot of these incentive programs, plus every bill you pay is going towards these incentive programs. So reach out to your utility provider if you're going to do any of this kind of work, because they often will subsidize a lot of the cost. But again, there's insulation in here. Might be a little colder for the tenants, but not something that's a huge deal on day one. And also, I'm inheriting all of the tenants, so they're used to this property right now anyway, so not really a big deal. And also, what I mentioned, there is no insulation on the front half crawl space area for some reason. Maybe something that I would think about getting in later. And then also, he did mention this vapor barrier. Like I said, there is no vapor barrier, so I'm going to put something down. Again, that's part of that $3,500 cost that I already spoke about. So those were the issues he noted with the insulation, ventilation, and vapor barrier. This is more just the information part. Again, goes over the same kind of stuff. Looks like the dryer vent definitely needs to be cleaned out. That's something you should do every single year as a homeowner. Don't want a dryer fire, so you can just disconnect it, or if it's a short amount of space between the dryer and the outside part where it actually vents out, kind of just stick your hand in there and pull it out. Might be a little gross, but whatever. It's what happens when you're in real estate. You do a couple of gross things, unless you have a ton of money and you pay other people to do that kind of stuff. So the next part was doors, windows, and interiors. And there was really not any negative stuff when it came to doors and windows. A lot of the vinyl windows looked brand new. The vinyl siding was brand new, so that was pretty cool. This one issue that I was going to talk about that came from the report, and when there was an issue with the roof before they fixed it. So you can see here, and I knew about this water issue that was in one of the units, and this is something we've inherited the tenants, they've already been living with this stuff, not going to address it day one. And also these tiles, I have them actually in my house, they're right above me. They're most likely asbestos, so the people who own the property now didn't want to go through fixing it because could be asbestos. The contractor, which I actually didn't know you could do, suggested to just have a drywall company come up, put drywall right over it, which I didn't know you could do. So that's what I will probably do once this tenant moves out, but not before then. So right now, not a huge deal. Eventually, will get fixed. Next part of the report was the garage. No issues with the garage because there isn't a garage. And then we have cabinetry and appliances. Again, there were no issues with the cabinetry and appliances. He went over them. They're kind of all like these cute little studio style apartments, one bedroom. So they have these older, funky, smaller appliances, which you see a lot in Boston or New York or bigger East Coast cities. Haven't seen any in Durham, but this really has some cool charm. They all worked well, efficient, no need to change any of them. So no issues there. Again, the tenants use them. When tenants start to move out, pretty much what will happen is that I'll upgrade the units and be able to charge more rent. So that's the whole play with this property. Right now they're decently under market rent. So when it comes time to renew, I will increase the rent to not market rent, but more. And then if they want to stay, they can stay. If they don't want to stay because it's more expensive, then I will go in and renovate the property and then get someone in for more close to market rent. So again, no real issues there. Next was the plumbing. The plumbing is pretty solid. Someone took out all of the old cast iron and put in brand new PVC, which is that white piping. They also, for the supply lines, took out a lot of the copper and put in PEX. So that's more of the modern type of plumbing that you will get. PEX doesn't really break, and PVC is much better than cast iron. Cast iron can last 100 years, but it can also crack at any point, which could cause a lot of issues, which you don't love. So you can see in this photo here, there's an old cast iron pipe down there where it's noted, and then this is the new PVC. So PVC is definitely preferable. Cast iron isn't bad. Some of my properties have cast iron, not a big deal, but could break at any moment. There were a couple of issues with the water heaters. Something I learned about recently is this TPRV. It's like a pressure relief valve. So this should have one, and it doesn't. I guess all hot water tanks have one. This one doesn't. So you need that kind of thing. And then also this one had the pressure relief valve, but it was leaking, which I contacted a plumber about this, and he basically said the water's probably too hot. So if we turn it down, it should fix that issue. Won't fix how ugly it looks and all of this gunk that has built up on the hot water tank, but it'll still work and not really be a big deal. Eventually, hot water tanks, you got to fix them out. These are electric hot water tanks too, which the short-term rental that I bought recently was from 1994, the hot water tank. It was still working. Hot water tanks are supposed to have like 8 to 12 years of life, but for some reason, electrical water tanks seem to last a lot longer. I think the gas ones are really, though, more along the lines of that time period. So that was for issues that they noted. General information. They always have to show you where the water supply shutoff is. Here you can see this PEX piping. It either comes in this white or clear type color, or it's either red for hot or blue for cold lines. And then also something that I learned on these from this inspection, which is very helpful, is that it'll tell you the year that stuff was installed. So with looking at the serial number here, you can see that it's 1999, the 27th week, which that one's obviously kind of old. That one might need to get replaced at some point once it breaks, but I'm not going to replace it prematurely. So if you're looking at hot water tanks or other type of furnaces, which I'll actually show with the furnaces what year that they are from. And you can see this hot water tank also at the same time. Probably the other ones are pretty similar. Yeah, it looks like they were all changed out in 1999 actually. So they're still working strong, but those will probably need to get changed out sometime soon because they're pretty old. But I'm not going to change them if they're still working. If it were a short-term rental where I don't want to have that issue come up with a guest and get a negative 5-star review, then I would change it. But these are long-term tenants who are used to it. You can change out a hot water tank in a day. So I'm not going to fix it until it needs to get fixed. So that was the main part of all of the plumbing. Overall, pretty good. Now we can move on to the electrical. There was not that much wrong with the electrical. They mentioned that I should get new carbon monoxide detectors because they were old, which I will probably put in. A couple of open junction boxes just means they're missing a cover, and then one of the ceiling fans was not working. So not a big deal. You can see here, yeah, they're talking about smoke and carbon monoxide alarms are older than 10 years. So should fix that kind of stuff. But again, not in huge disarray. You can see we have 4 panels for each of the units, so that's good. Nothing crazy that they noted. One electrician came by and said that there was cloth wiring going to each of the ranges, which is kind of like one step above knob and tube. Knob and tube is not great. Cloth wiring I've seen plenty of times before. I've never had any issues about it. I contacted a few other electricians after this one told me about that, and they said it's not a big deal if the ranges have been there for a long time. If you plan on upgrading the ranges, I would then switch out the wire. So if I do some upgrades, that's when we would switch out the wire to the ranges, but nothing that needs to get changed right now. So really not any issues with the electrical or anything that I will take on today. Maybe eventually later something will come up. The next and last thing was all about the heating and air conditioning. So 4-unit building, that means I have 4 heating systems and 4 cooling systems. They have these interesting things in North Carolina that I'll show right here. They're called gas pack systems. So basically they're outside and they're these big things. Half of it is an AC and the other half is heating. So there's 2 of those, and then also they have 2 condensing units, which are just air conditioners for 2 of the other units, and then in the upstairs they have furnaces in the attic. I've never seen someone do furnaces in the attic, but that's how they have them. So that's what he looked at. 2 of the tenants had moved in recently, and the only thing that gas is needed for them for utilities is for the heat. So they actually didn't turn it on. I'm not too concerned about it, but that means we didn't actually get to test the heat for 2 of the units. But they were newer units compared to one of the other ones, which is from 1997. That one I'm a little bit concerned about, but it's still working, chugging along. But that one will probably have to get replaced within, it could be the day that I close, it could be 5 years from now. So we'll just see what happens once it breaks. But the other thing that was interesting, again, because one of the furnaces was from 97, so was one of the compressors. So the refrigerant or Freon or whatever that goes into it is this R22 refrigerant, which doesn't really exist anymore. So if you needed new refrigerant in order to keep it cold, it costs like a few $100s a pound. So you're getting close to almost like $2,000 just to replace the refrigerant, when a new compressor is going to be $6,000 or $6,000, for example. So at that point, you might as well just change out the compressor, especially because this one's from 1998 actually. So you can see right here, serial number 9812. So if you're going to a property and looking to figure out how old stuff is, 98 is the year, 12 is the week of the year that it was installed or built, actually not installed, but built. So that's what we learned from this property. The rest of them from information. And you can see here, these are these outdoor ones that are AC plus heat all in one, rather than compressor in one spot and furnace in the other. So you can see here, again, looking at serial numbers, 11, so that's 2011, and the second week, so that's how we learn how old they are, or at least when they were manufactured, not necessarily installed, but should be around the same time. So with all of these heating and cooling systems, which he said were all operable and working well, other than the ones he couldn't test, I'm definitely going to get them serviced. Something I do on all my properties every single year is get them serviced for heating and cooling, just the same way you would take your car to the shop every few months or 6 months or miles or whatever. You want to get that done. It'll just increase the life of your systems. Rather than them being 20-year systems, might be 25 years, and those 5 years will make a big difference, especially when you have a lot of properties. And it's a lot of money to replace these kind of things, so you want to keep them working as long as possible. So the last part that was part of the inspection were fireplaces and solid fuel burning equipment, which there were none of. The chimney no longer is something that gets used because it all vents outside. So there was nothing there for that, and that's the entire inspection for this 4-unit building. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video, and if you did, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you can get more real estate investing content. Tap the notification bell so you get notified. You can also follow me on TikTok and Instagram, where I have very similar content. I think myself understanding construction as well as inspections or issues with houses is a huge additive in real estate, especially in North Carolina, where there's this non-refundable due diligence deposit that you put down before you have an inspection. So all these issues that I found were things that I knew about before getting the inspection, which is really awesome and something that can really help you when you go offer on a property. Just feeling confident and comfortable knowing what issues are there before you even put your money down and have the issue of, oh, should I back out because I found about this issue? So I just knew going in what was going to be an issue and what wasn't going to be an issue, so that was very helpful. So thanks again for watching. Hopefully you guys learned something, and more wealth is coming your way.